In 1969, I was born in the back seat of a 1960-ish Cutlass Oldsmobile. And I think that story is a little bit of kind of who I am. I've always been ready to go. I'm kind of always pushing with a lot of intentionality on anything that I do, whether I'm good at it or bad at it. I'm ready to go.
Welcome to Tip the Scales podcast. I'm Jenn Gore, and I'm taking over again for Maria. I think she's on vacation. We're here at MTMP. We're here at MTMP, and I am joined by Darren Findling.
You got it.
And I want to make sure I say your name right, but he's better known in our industry as the Probate Pro. We talked about how he scaled his business to over 140 people, his entrepreneurial insights, some of his wild childhood background, upbringing, and his cool story, which makes him really unique and somebody who is a great friend. Darren.
Yes.
Welcome to Tip the Scales. Will you go ahead and introduce yourself for our audience?
I'm happy to. I'm Darren Findling. I'm the owner of a law firm called the Probate Pro, and we are a one-stop national probate coordination firm. And what does that mean? We solve the pain point of most law firms that are handling volume or individual death cases, personal injury lawyers, mass tort firms, with their difficulty at finding probate lawyers around the country to open up their estates when somebody has died to give them standing to file their lawsuit.
So, not everyone is as savvy about probate as you, but basically what you're saying is that when someone dies in a case that's personal injury, mass torts, then the case can't be resolved until it processes through. Well, it's resolved, but it can't be fully resolved until it goes to probate court. And probate court is a necessary part of life, unfortunately, for a lot of people that have to go through it because it's a slow process.
Yeah, you're almost there, Jen. The difference is that in most states, before you have standing to actually file the suit or to process the claim, you need a letter of authority, a letter of administration from the probate court. That gives them the golden ticket, the standing to then be able to file the lawsuit.
So let's just make that even more in layman's terms. Okay, so your family member died as a result of something where you have a personal injury claim. You can't even put in their claim realistically or file a lawsuit on their behalf until you've gotten the probate ball rolling.
That's correct. And in fact, it is the personal representative that has the standing to file the suit. But importantly, for most injury attorneys, it's the personal representative that gets to hire the law firm. So if there's a decedent killed in an auto accident and there's no spouse and two children, and one runs to one law firm and the other runs to the other law firm, it's that firm that successfully gets the person appointed personal representative that controls the litigation, controls the right to file, and of course earns the legal fee.
So I'm going to tell you how I experienced this in this past year at my firm. We had a mother who was killed in an accident, and she had 3 young kids, and the father was not involved. So this is a single mom. And, we couldn't file the lawsuit on behalf of the mom until, she wasn't married. And so it's like, who is in charge of these 3 kids? Because really the claim fell to the kids, right? They are the heirs. So we wanted to do all these things. We wanted to file the lawsuit to begin all these parts of the case because it was we want to compel evidence. We want to do different things, but we couldn't do a single thing until we were able to get, basically what you're explaining, which is the standing to be the ones who could file on behalf of the children.
That's right. And in fact, one of the big issues in medical malpractice claims is obtaining medical records.
Yes.
And they can't even release the medical records without the appointment of a personal representative in most states. So yes, there is, I'm usually the first person that's called after they sign up the case because there is an interest in getting that letter of authority as quickly as possible.
So it's the first
to secure the litigation.
Whoever gets there first.
That's right. and there's a race to the Probate Pro, and then we're racing to the court.
So how did you get into this?
Yeah, it's a quirky business. Early on in my professional life, I was very entrepreneurial, and I was doing probate services early.
You were drawn to death.
Yeah, I wasn't drawn to death. Actually, early in my career, I looked around and I recognized that it would take me a while to break out in the personal injury field.
So you were considering it.
Absolutely. And I looked at different fields, but I understood this area right out of law school. It felt intuitive, logical, linear, how to do the work.
And it's timeless. I think it's such a good area of law for people to consider going into, just because of the fact, like, I can't really imagine how probate could go away.
I agree. I think it would be awfully difficult to do so. And early on, when I was evaluating kind of the world of how am I going to break out, I had no cases, I had no money.
What do you mean by breakout?
Well, I wanted to stand out. I was very entrepreneurial.
You wanted to go big.
Absolutely.
From day one.
No question.
Yeah. So can you just give our audience a context for how the size of your firm?
Sure.
The growth, the history, just give us some stats.
I'll give you some stats. So we're at about 140 employees.
Okay. This is a large probate firm.
Yes. I think we may be the largest in the country. I don't have any way of evaluating it.
To the largest probate law firm in the United States right now.
Yeah. And I thank all of the personal injury lawyers around the country that send us work to allow us to get to where we are, but is with a lot of hard work and dedication and planning to get there. We're in multiple states. And we are national in terms of our coverage for this probate work. So any lawyer in the country that has a death case that needs a probate attorney to get the standing to file that suit can contact the Probate Pro. And we've got lawyers lined up in our network all over the country, every nook and cranny, small town in South Dakota, big city.
Because of your network.
That we built it out.
Yeah.
So that is the business that we're in. And how did we get there? Well, we got there by first focusing specifically in the state of Michigan, where I came out of law school and built my business and went one case at a time, trying to grow and build a brand, building a brand, working with personal injury lawyers, recognizing that going direct to consumer was going to be very expensive for the cost of acquisition and very slow in building a business. So I developed a relationship with other professionals, in this case, personal injury lawyers, recognizing that that would be a B2B strategy that would continue as long as I secured a relationship with a Jenn Gore in my community.
Your clients are the lawyers.
They would send us business for the rest of their career. And guess what? You and your ilk spend a lot of money acquiring clients. So I get to ride the coattails of those dollar spends, and they're going to send us their work. So thank you for spending money, Jen, and all the other personal injury lawyers out there. We appreciate it because it's helped us grow.
I'm super impressed. What you've built is something that not many lawyers achieve. I know that you work with Gino Wickman one-on-one. He's your coach, right?
Correct.
So tell me a little bit about how did you get involved with Gino and scaling your company using EOS?
Absolutely. So Gino happens to be a Detroiter. So early on, as Gino was building EOS and before he had written Traction, there were a number of people in my community, entrepreneurs that I associated with, who said, hey, you have to meet Gino. And the first time I heard him speak, I was blown away. I knew that this made sense. There's a diet, a recipe, a structure, a process to grow a business, and I needed it. And I know he's grown massively internationally. I'm fortunate that to this day, he still is he is our implementer.
And so you meet with him annually?
I meet with him annually for 2 days. There's 15 companies or so that still work with Gino Wickman directly, and we're one of them.
You and Mike Morse are two law firms in Detroit that work with him.
That's correct. And Michael and I went.
I love how every time I say Mike Morse, you go Michael.
Well, the reason is I knew him before he branded as Mike.
I know. So
and so I grew up with Mike.
You always call him Michael.
Yes.
It's so funny.
Yes. And so we introduced ourselves to Gino quite early, and I think that most people who come in the presence of Gino Wickman recognize his genius and recognize what great value it could add to a business. And we know, Jen, I know you interview other lawyers, you talk to lawyers all the time. Most lawyers have no idea when they come out of law school how to grow and build a business. So Gino Wickman provided a framework to allow that to occur. There's a lot of other ways to do it. This is a great framework.
Yeah. So you and Mike are probably some of his star students, right? I mean, you guys
In the
are
legal space,
huge success stories for Gino. Tell me, since you mentioned Michael Morse.
You mentioned Michael.
Well, that's how I think of you two together with Gino. Yeah. Tell me how long you guys have known each other, because I feel like my memory is that you guys are childhood friends.
Exactly. I think we lived a street or so apart from each other, and he was best friends with my brother probably in second grade.
Older or younger?
My older brother.
Okay.
Michael's a year older than me, so I've known Michael from childhood and been very fortunate to grow up with him and his family, his beautiful family.
Your kids are friends, right?
Friends, almost like relatives, but friends, of course, and neighbors to this day. And Michael's a mentor and a brilliant entrepreneur that I love exchanging ideas with. And through my career, I've asked him a million questions to help us grow the Probate Pro.
I want to say I think Michael is how we met. I
think so. Yeah.
Because
I actually do. I remembered he was talking to you. I was over there and he said, Darren, you need to talk to Jen. She's brilliant.
Oh, so sweet.
I had to throw a little compliment there, Jen.
I feel like we met at Crisp in Atlanta. It couldn't have been 2022. That does seem not that long ago, but it feels like a lifetime ago.
Right. After the number of conferences and the number of times we bumped into each other, it's been 3 or 4 or so years that we've known each other.
And I remember when I met you right off the bat, we just got along and you were so helpful in giving me advice and hey, because I think you've been in the conference scene for a while and I was new to the scene at the time.
I was still pretty new, probably a year before you in the scene.
This is post-COVID.
But I think that there is something that I'm sure you can relate to, which is that entrepreneurs love to be around other entrepreneurs. So it's magnetic, right? Yeah. We love to talk and get inspired from each other. I'm deeply curious about how other people do things and how other people live their lives. So I think that that's what allowed us to spark that friendship. A lot of questions to each other about professionally what you were doing, what journey you were on as you were growing your business, and of course, vice versa. And I think that we found a bond simply based on that curiosity.
Well, you also always pose really interesting questions to me about well, have you considered this? Or, have you thought about this? Or you don't you'll see me doing something that you're and you're never judgmental.
I try not to be. It's something I work
on. You're very Jen, do you think you should do this? Or you have such a kind way of being I don't know if you should do that, and
well, I appreciate that. And Jen, I think that I think that asking curiosity questions without judgment is a really good strategy. It's worked very well for me. And I generally appreciate when people ask me curiosity questions. Nobody really wants to be around judgmental people.
No.
They're kind of jerky to be around. And the energy doesn't feel right. But when somebody is generally curious, you are, in your mind, you're wow, they care about me. They're interested in me. They want to learn more instead of just talking about themselves. So I am generally curious about how other people are doing things. And you are a brilliant entrepreneur. And I was drawn to that. And I'm drawn to other people that are out there outside of law that are just creative, inspiring, interesting people.
So I actually think we also met because when you were talking, you reminded me, I used to think of you as a conference connoisseur. Do you remember when we went to this one conference and you were this is the conference
of misfit toys? Well, I looked around and I could see that we had been at conferences in which there's a lot of really talented, brilliant people who are doing really well. And then we went to this one conference where it felt
which will not be named.
It would be the B and C team. And we're looking around like they didn't even know the ABCs of anything. And we're like, this is a bunch of misfit toys. And we laughed a lot about that.
And then I remember you were telling me about your amazing, interesting childhood.
Yes.
Really right when I first met you. And I was so intrigued by your story of like almost how you have such a taste for risk because of your upbringing. So I don't know if you want to share. I think it's a really
I'm good with
some
it.
interesting things to like what has shaped you to who you are.
Okay, but let's set the stage
Okay.
appropriately, okay? I think we got this couch here. Can I lay down on the couch like a therapist would?
Yeah.
Is it okay if I lay down like you would in a therapist's
You need
office?
this pillow?
I think I don't know how that looks on camera, but I think I'm gonna tell you, Jen,
We're gonna go back in time.
We're gonna go back in time. First of all, I don't know if you know this, Jen. I don't know if I've shared this. This is news to you. Maybe not. In 1969, I was born in the back seat of a 1960-ish Cutlass Oldsmobile.
Oh, really?
In the back seat of the car. We never made it to the hospital.
You came in
I
with
just
a
popped
splash.
out, and my mom said I was ready for the world pretty fast, faster than maybe her body was. And I think that story is a little bit of kind of who I am. I've always been ready to go. I'm kind of always pushing with a lot of intentionality on anything that I do, whether I'm good at it or bad at it. I'm ready to go.
Like, I'll be like, do you want to go to this nightclub? You're like, okay.
Yeah, okay. Why
you want
not?
to go to this party, dinner?
Yeah, whatever. I'm ready.
You're ready.
And I'm even things that I'm not good at. Like if you were to put me on a basketball court with Michael Jordan right now, in my mind, I would think I could score a basket on him. Even though there's 0% chance that I could, but that's just my mindset.
You're bold.
I'm bold. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to do it.
And you have a lot of confidence.
Yeah, and what's if Michael Jordan swats the ball, it's still a good story, right?
You love a good story.
I'm good with a good story. I'm good with it. So as we move forward from my birth, where I popped out of my mother, and they cut the umbilical cord in the car. Like,
oh, wow.
It was all done in the car, and the car was a mess, I was told afterwards. But early on, when my parents got divorced,
seats.
Yeah, I come from a parenting, a style of parenting in which there was not many parents around.
This is the intriguing part.
Yeah, so I think this is where you get formed, where you're willing to take risks and have tremendous independence, knowing that you can rely on yourself to accomplish things, to go through life without relying on other people. So my mother and father got divorced when I was in kindergarten. My father, who's a Holocaust survivor, orphan Holocaust survivor. My mother,
and your father was a lawyer.
And a lawyer. And my mother, who was a basically child bride at 16, came from Morocco to this country, having never kissed a man, let alone and had children a year later. So this was a really kind of a recipe for a challenging marriage. And ultimately, I was in a household in which my father had custody. My mother didn't have custody, and my father was working. He was running a business.
What type of lawyer?
He was a general practitioner, but he tried cases and he did work, and he was a hard worker. And so then there's 4 kids in the early 70s living in a house with a father that was not who had custody. That was unheard of in the early 70s.
It was so
just totally unheard of.
And not many people were divorced.
Yes.
Right?
And so I early on kind of assumed, at least in my mind, that I had a responsibility to my family, and I kind of had that bold leadership in my family, and I kind of
What
remember,
number were you?
I was the 4th. I was the youngest.
You were the youngest,
4.
but you felt you were in charge of the family?
I just kind of felt that way. I remember there was a housekeeper. I remember firing her because of something. And the audacity, I had a lot of audacity to do things like this.
You've just been this way your whole life.
Yeah, so I think that I'm just kind of very comfortable in discomfort. I feel comfortable with being left to my own skills and talents to work within what I've got to try to achieve.
But you were never, as a child, like sad or like, why am I different? Or why is my family different? Like, I understand you've become extremely resilient, but what you're describing is that you weren't really bothered by all of this as a child.
Yeah, and I know my older siblings tell a different story. They were really wounded, injured, like really painful. My experience was not, I don't remember feeling injured or hurt. I do remember feeling alone and knowing that I had to navigate on my own. I definitely remember those feelings. I don't remember any sadness, and I don't remember fear or like, crying
Or
at
like,
night.
where's my mom?
No. And I would see my mother and I would see my father, but they weren't like around all the time. So we had tremendous opportunity to experiment.
This is
All
probably
sorts
an
of
ideal
wild.
childhood for you.
Yeah, in the 70s, we were blowing things up, lighting our names in gasoline in the streets and staying out all night and lots of natural consequences. So we would get injured or we would have issues that would come up and we'd learn, well, you don't do that anymore. But I always had a North Star. I always kind of knew directionally what was right and what was wrong. So I think the reason I didn't go to drugs or alcohol or jail was because I always had a very strong directional North Star on how I wanted to live life, even though I didn't have parental rules around that structure.
It's so interesting that you describe that because knowing you, you're a very, what I would call middle of the path kind of guy. Like, I don't see you hanging from the chandeliers drunk.
Right.
Like, I don't.
Right.
Like,
The
you'll
wild. I'll
go
do
out and have fun, but I never see you take it to a level where we're worried about you.
I'm always aware of where I am in that. Now, I would do riskier behavior when I was younger, whether it was parachuting or bungee jumping or extreme skiing, heli skiing, and all that kind of stuff, where it was a little more risky in terms of adrenaline rush. But I'm not the guy that ever wants to lose control
Or like
at the bar anymore.
Like doing drugs.
No.
Because a lot of people could have your childhood and they could go completely unhinged.
Right. No, that's not my move. And I do. I'm really aware of where I am, even when whether I'm drinking or out late. I'm acutely aware of like where I am in how I am to myself and how I am acting among other people. So I'm not that wild, pass out drunk person.
Yeah. I've
That's
never
not
seen
me.
that.
Right.
And so you told me this story about how you were a certain age and you left the house for several weeks and no one noticed.
Yeah, that's true.
What was that?
Well, I think my girlfriend was sleeping over. She was 14 and I was 16. And then that happened, like, that would happen and nobody blinked. And then I remembered I left for a few weeks down to Florida for spring break with friends. And a week and a half or 2 weeks into the trip, my dad asked my brother where Darren was. And he's like, he's been in Florida for 2 weeks. What do you mean, where is he? But that was the level of looseness in this household. Tremendous autonomy to do things, to go on road trips, to go explore the world without being told, no, you can't do that.
I imagine you're raising your children the exact same way.
No chance. Well, also, my wife, Allison, who came from a more disciplined, like a strong father, I had to be told, no, you can't do that. That's not normal behavior. So, of course, I've come, if you ask my kids, they probably say I swung way too far from the laissez-faire. I used to say to my dad, that laissez-faire parenting, I say, you were lazy and fair, not laissez-faire. But so no, I think I'm more balanced. If we'll bring my kids next time, we'll have them around the table and they can,
I want to hear
they can opine about how I was as a parent. But I think that they would say that there's, I'm much more balanced than that crazy wild. They love to hear stories about it though. But at family dinners, they're dying for these stories of what it was like to grow up in my household as a kid.
Is your belief that your childhood was good for you, but it maybe wouldn't have been good for your kids?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there was a certain resilience. I think just in how I'm wired, I think that did exist. And my siblings describe much more pain. Now they were also different ages, so I think that when you have a trauma like a divorce, as many families have gone through, depending on the age and where you are, affects you quite differently.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened to, I guess it kind of was okay. It was just my existence. It was what it was, and I navigated through it. But it formed a lot of who I am today. I think you
so
see that.
You'll tell me that your favorite like vacations are like being dropped into like Africa, like to like survive?
Yeah, a little bit like what's that, Naked and Afraid, or
That would
or
be
Survivor.
fun to you.
Well, my family does a lot of fun, wild trips.
You travel a lot.
We do not go to the typical vacation in Cancun and Atlanta Beach. Yeah, that is not. We do all sorts of very adventurous trips, which usually involves me driving a car through the country, a developing country. We were just in Morocco, just very recently.
Your roots.
My roots, and we've been in all sorts. We've been very fortunate to travel all over the world in a vehicle usually, or a truck or a van, and it's an adventure. And I want my kids to know that the world is larger and greater and more interesting than just tanning on a beach. They can go tan on the beach. I have no judgment of enjoying tanning on a beach, but there's not much substance or growth or learning from tanning on a beach. So
your vacations are all about growth and learning.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they just want to unplug.
I know. They want to unwind, but I'm cut
from different...
I'm wired that even I can't.
And
Jen, I don't know if you know this.
I'm right with you.
I can't watch a movie right now. I can't read a book. I'm 7 days a week. I'm on always. It's just the way I'm wired.
So like my ex-husband used to like love to go to like a resort like that and just lay on the beach for 7 days. Day 2, I'm done. Like I'm climbing the walls. I'm dysfunctional. I'm like, what are we going to go do? Like,
fancy.
I've read 3 books. I've listened to 25 podcasts.
Right, now what?
And I'm like, is there something wrong that I am like, I can't just sit still?
Right. And I don't know the inability to turn it off.
There could be something there.
Well, right. What is it? Is it I'm afraid to be in my own thoughts?
Are you afraid to be alone?
Afraid to be alone. I just think that my whole life has been filled with lots of content. And at this point, I feel like every moment is precious. I truly don't want to waste
laying
time.
On the beach.
I don't want to. I'm good tanning for 10 minutes, but then I don't want to waste time. I jump out of bed in the morning. I want to be productive.
Agreed.
I want to get stuff done. I want to create.
I'm so
I want to
glad
meet new
you brought
people.
up the movie.
I want to do lots of things that will be beneficial and creative.
Needle. We want to move the needle.
And there's no moving of the needle watching show after show after show on TV.
I'm going to tell you, I have the same problem, and I'm not surprised because this happens when we talk all the time. I find myself like, do you remember the joy you used to get when you would like watch a movie? Like when maybe you were like a kid or something. Like I go to like put on a movie now and like I'm bored after like 10 minutes and I can't watch like a movie through. It's like I was on the plane and I'd rather be like working on my computer, but then I'll be like, maybe I should give this movie a chance. And then you kind of start watching it and then I've wondered if it's because I'm so used to watching short form content that committing to a 2-hour movie, it feels like a lot.
I agree. I think that the social media stuff has definitely affected my brain.
Your attention span.
I tell you, I fly every week or 2 or 3. I haven't watched a movie in many years on an airplane. And some of those flights are long overseas flights. I haven't watched a movie on an airplane, which is very odd.
But you used to watch movies.
Oh, absolutely.
What happened?
I think that there's as I've gotten older, I unless that movie is going to somehow move the needle, as you said, I'm going to grow, learn, inspire. It has to be really good. It's got to be really good. I'm going to get bored very quickly and I'm going to want to do something else, more interesting, more creative, more productive, but not probably a movie. And I don't watch shows. You know, people watch all these great shows, White Lotus, Severance. I haven't seen any of them. I just can't commit to it. I'm kind of like you, but every so often I'll get into a show, but then that's like the only show. And right now I'm into White Lotus because I do think it has like an interesting, I think you would actually like White Lotus. Oh, that's great.
You would find it very funny, but it has like it's almost like an introspection on humanity. And so it's just interesting. Also, sometimes when you're a go person, like at the end of the day to like almost shut off your brain, like sometimes listening to a podcast or listening to a book on Audible or watching a show can kind of like quiet the mind. Yeah,
and I find that for me, the quieting of the mind, and I know that a lot of thought leaders in the space of, personal growth talk about meditation
Yes.
or taking quiet days to not touch your phone and not do any work. For me, I do meditate.
You do.
I do have great thoughts in the shower.
Yeah.
Shower is a very quiet space where it's very meditative. I love standing in the shower. I could stand there for an hour and just ideas kind of freely flow out when you have those quiet moments. I also find that when I go to the office early in the morning on a Sunday morning, I'll get to the office sometimes quite early. Sometimes if there's nothing to do, there's no like actual paperwork or busy work, I will be pressured, like writers, pressure to create. And I like to create under that little bit of pressure. So that also is very helpful for me because I like to constantly be creative.
Agreed.
So it's kind of a fun piece. And I don't know where do you get if you're thinking, for example, of a content for social media, are you coming up like in spurts with content, or are they through the day?
An idea will hit me and I'll write it down. And then when we're going to shoot, I'm like, sometimes it's better to shoot when real time when you have that idea, but it's not always possible. But I like being creative. I like putting spins on things or taking something someone did and putting my own riff on it. And, I think the creation of a personal brand is something you've done. Everyone knows you at these conferences. Everyone sees you.
Well,
you're always wearing this.
Got the red hoodie. I don't wear the red hoodie outside of conference life, but everyone here knows the red hoodie.
Like do you have 3 in your bag for the whole week?
I have enough so that I don't get stinky in them that I have them in my
People think you're wearing the same outfit the whole conference.
And it does make it easier because you have to buy all these great outfits. I just have to have a red hoodie. It's quite easy.
It's so much easier.
It's a lot easier. But I also, when I was at one of the first conferences I remembered going to when I was going to try conference life. Now remember, for the first 20-ish years of my career, I'd never stepped foot in a conference. Never once. And then I had this idea that I was going to go national with the concept, and I wanted to see and kind of dip my toe into the conference sphere. And so I went to the conference and everyone was wearing a suit. Beautiful suits, sometimes very, very expensive suits. And suits are whatever.
I can't imagine you wearing a suit.
And I looked around, I'm like, they're at a marketing conference and everyone's wearing a suit. Everyone looks exactly the same. What is going on? So I wrote a note, red hoodie. Like I want to stand out like a hot person walking.
And you weren't worried about being viewed as casual.
Yeah. When am I going to get sent to the principal's office? I mean, no, but really, there's a fine line you walk, right? You don't want to offend. You don't want to get people angry at you, but you also want to stand out like the cool guy who had the mohawk in high school or the beautiful person that walks through the bar and everyone stares at as they walk across the bar. You want to walk that fine line. I didn't feel like a red hoodie with everyone wearing suits, anyone was going to get angry at me.
Like sweatpants.
Or flip-flops and sweatpants. I probably wouldn't have done that. But I was comfortable wearing a red hoodie, and now it's become a bit of a brand piece that everyone recognizes me. And some people have no idea. I'm not particularly unique looking, but when you're wearing a red hoodie, you do stand out. Yeah, you stand out.
I think what you're describing is so critical for a brand is that you have to find a way to stand out. And you were in a situation, which is you're a white guy who is a certain age bracket, which there's a lot of guys that kind of fit your description, right? And so it's harder, I think, to stand out as a guy in this industry, period. For me as a woman, it was easier just to stand out immediately. And so I kind of go the other way where I'm always trying to be as more overdressed because like in my unique way to stand out is to be kind of like this other end over here.
And you stand out, but you recognized it.
Everyone has to find a way to stand out.
And again, for me, it had to be authentic. True. And so wearing a hoodie
is you.
And jeans is totally me. I'm not going to dress up like a clown and walk through because that's not authentically who I am, but I'm perfectly comfortable wearing a hoodie. In fact, I like traveling on airplanes with a hoodie because it's kind of cozy so the conference world made it a lot easier. And I think you were talking about personal brand. I think that as I was as I spend time thinking about personal brand as well as attention, right? Where everyone pretends like they don't want to have attention. Baloney.
Otherwise, marketing.
Otherwise, you wouldn't be on television. You wouldn't be marketing. You wouldn't be doing any of this. I looked at myself and said, okay, how do I want to get the attention? What style of attention do I want? Do I want to be disruptive as a jerk? Do I want to be disruptive in a positive way? How do I want to be viewed? How do I want to be talked about? These are things that I'm sure we all think about, how we want to be perceived by our community, those people that you're trying to gain the attention.
Yeah,
but
you build it.
But you can't simply look like everybody else.
No.
You can't do what everyone else is doing, and you can't be like everyone else.
No. And I think it's leaning into your uniqueness of what makes you you. Like, people always ask me, oh, it's so hard to be a woman in the industry. I'm like, anything that is perceived to be hard is actually your judo move. It's if you can flip that to being, oh my God, this is the thing that makes me stand out, and actually lean into it.
Totally.
Then it's actually your power move.
Absolutely. And Jen, the more you understand yourself, right? You've done some work to understand yourself. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. I know my insecurities. I know who I am. I'm perfectly comfortable with who I am. So
you are.
I'm just going to kind of let myself be that way in a playful way. I also didn't want, here's another example. So as people were building websites early on, every lawyer is standing there with their arms crossed and a bunch of law books behind them. Why? Because the other lawyer did. And everyone told them that's what they had to do. Well, if you look at my website, look, it's the opposite of that. I'm bending over backwards in a suit. It's silly. It's playful. The whole thing is almost comical. Now,
there's levity.
Some people may look at my website and say, that guy's a joke. But I don't think so. I think most people, it's a breath of fresh air that you're not acting.
You are kind of silly.
Else.
You did send me multiple funny gifts during the holidays.
Right. So we do a lot of gifting.
A squatty potty. Which many staff members come to the firm and wonder why I have a squatty potty in the bathroom.
Yeah. Well, here's an example. So many years ago, early on, actually, Michael Morris and I would chat about this. We would talk about how do you stand out in the holiday season. 3 weeks into the holiday season, you have a cookie basket. A fruit basket, a fruit flower basket. You've got a mixture of cookies. You've got lots of cookies and baked goods. And I can't tell you, it's so nice when they show up.
A lot of cheese.
It's so nice when they show up. I'm like, oh, so nice. I have no way of knowing who gave me what, and nor do I remember year to year who gave me what. It is literally like sending a thank you card that has a pre-stamp on it. People feel like it's an obligation. Well, how about standing out? So I said, I'm going to send a gift. I don't care if they ever keep the gift. I want the gift to be an impact gift. I want them to go, oh, that's weird. That's fun. That's different. So one year I sent hundreds of 6-foot ladders. And in the ladder, there's a big picture of me that I created, 4 feet long, of me climbing the ladder. And it was something like, grow with the Probate Pro, climb the ladder with the Probate Pro.
What did people say when they got these?
And I delivered these to lawyers all over the place in Michigan, and they loved it. And then they didn't know what to do with it because they couldn't fit it in their car.
You probably should have got a step ladder.
Well, no, I wanted the impact. I wanted them to say, what do I do with this ladder now? And years later, there are 6-foot ladders in people's offices that still exist. So the squatty potty is in the same example. I figured, let's be playful. I sent squatty potties
nationwide.
A funny picture of me sitting on a throne. And so we've done all sorts of fun, playful gifts to stand out. It's about attention. I have no problem telling anybody there, I love attention for the Probate Pro. And I love it and I want it. That's why I blog and post
your
every day.
TikToks are funny. I remember you did the one where you were in a casket.
Yeah. And listen,
Hold on, how did that one go?
Well, I mean, listen, you try things. Some work, some don't. This morning, I shot something at the airport and I posted it. Within 5 minutes, a few people loved it and my family rebelled and said, get that off immediately. I'm not even going to say what it is, but I thought it was hilarious.
You've done some where you're like like they're funny where it would be a very serious situation and you bring light to it.
Yeah, but come on, we're humans. Let's have some fun, and we don't have to take ourselves so seriously. And I think that clients appreciate, they want professional, they want good, but they don't need you to be as
Stuffy.
no, come on, that's pretentious and
You've
stuffy.
really mastered that, Darren. Like, there's a lot of young lawyers that listen to this podcast. There's a lot of people who, like you said, they're trying to replicate what other people did. I think you are a great example of somebody who's leaned into who you are. You're uniquely yourself, which allows you to stand out, and you're not overly serious or stuffy. While a lot of times I'm in rooms with you where you're more successful than many of the people in the room, but you don't come off like I'm better than, or you're so down to earth. And like, I think a lot of people don't even realize you have this massive firm, because that's just not what you lead with.
And I appreciate that. And I'll say that I'm a very serious business
You
person.
are.
I am growing this business. We're just at the beginning.
Like, this is a nationwide business.
Yeah, and this is going to scale and grow significantly more. I'm very serious. I'm serious about the numbers. I'm serious about the growth. And we can be humans, and we can be kind, and we can be gracious, and we can be curious without being jerks. And I think that that's a message that I would say if a younger lawyer was listening to this. I think you can do both. For somebody to think that you have to be a jerk to climb the ladder is silliness.
And not true. You've shown that. Can you just explain more? We kind of talked about, how you get involved, but we're here at Mass Torts in Las Vegas filming this. And, Mass Torts is a large part of your business. Yeah. And some of the people that are listening may not even know what Mass Torts are.
Yeah, let's do it.
So give me an example, layman's terms, of a case where it's not even a case. It's a volume of cases that you could get from a mass torts firm, and how you would get involved in mass torts.
Terrific. So first, for those who don't know what a mass tort is, because there is confusion among a lot of lawyers and lay people about what that even means, but a tort is an injury at a large scale. So think of talc powder by Johnson & Johnson, Roundup spray, the weed killer by Monsanto, Camp Lejeune, which is a water poisoning. These are cases in which many, many, many people were injured and or have died, meaning they were injured, then died, or they died as a result of this mass tort. So you have these cases that get filed in large scale. Sometimes there's thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of plaintiffs who have been injured in these mass cases. Many of those people die. They may die from the Monsanto weed killer spray. The cancer may have killed them, or simply during the pendency of their case, they may have just died of other causes while the case was going on. Those people who have died, these law firms have to deal with this piece of probate that we keep referring to, having the legal authority to advance that claim in the court system. They have to have standing. We know how that works. Hopefully the lawyers out there understand that basic concept. So they come to us, and we become...
They might bring 1,000 files.
They could bring 1,000, they could bring 10, they could bring 1. So we work with firms that hand us 1 a year. We work with firms that hand us thousands. So it's all over the place. And we work with most of the largest mass tort firms in the country. Most of them use us. And I'll tell you kind of an interesting quick story. The first conference I ever went to, I had an idea that I had written on paper that I was going to take my state-based strategy and I was going to go national with it. And it was an audacious idea. It was about 75% thought out. And I wrote it down as a white paper. And I came to a national conference, first one I ever went to. And you know this, Jen, but I sit in the front row.
I sit right there with you.
And the reason I sit in the front row, for anybody that listens, why do I sit in the front row? Not because I have bad eyesight or because I'm short and I can't see over the people's head, but I know who sits in the front row. The person who's speaking's friends and colleagues. Absolutely. The most important person in that room is at the dais, at the microphone, speaking. And who's there next to them? all sorts of other people that are affiliated with them rooting
There's
them on.
actually data on this that the people that make the most money are always in the front row. And I don't like to have any distractions.
Well, that's another reason. And for me, I'm highly distractible.
I know.
Like you.
So we have to go
So
in
I'm
the front
focused. And by the way, I'm sitting next to the most important people in the room. I sit in the front row, first conference I ever go to, Mark Lanier.
They always call you out too.
Mark
Right?
Lanier. Well, in this particular case, first conference, Mark Lanier speaking. And I'm sitting next to this very nice person, Rick Meadow, who turns to me and says, "Hey, who are you? What are you doing?" I don't know who he is. He happens to be Mark Lanier's partner in the firm of Lanier Law Firm. I tell him why I'm here and what my idea is. He looks at me and says, "It's the greatest idea I've ever heard." Now, I don't know if he's playing me. I don't know if he's serious. He says, "It's the greatest idea I've ever heard. We needed you in this industry a long time ago." I said, "Wow." I was like, I got the chills. I'm like, "Wow, that's amazing." Throughout the conference, every time Rick is in the hallway and he sees me, he says, "Darren, come over here." And he introduces me to people. I walk out of that conference. I think we had landed 3 or 4 of the largest mass tort firms in the country within days of leaving that conference. There was a massive need for our service. And thank you, Rick. Thank you, Rick, for that great moment. But I think there's some lessons there. Sit in the front row
Absolutely.
and talk to a lot of people.
You know, we both live that mantra.
Talk to a lot of people, Jen.
And I think, people would say some of this industry or business in general is relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of principles that you and I both believe in, which is that like just showing up is like 90% of the battle. And then be genuinely interested in other people.
Yeah. And I've seen you, because I've been to a lot of conferences. I know how many people you talk to and how well known you are in this space for all of those qualities that you just mentioned. And I think that one of the things that many people, because of just lack of drive, insecurity, whatever it may be, they don't love talking to other people. They want to retreat. They want to go back to their room. You're at a conference. This is an opportunity to talk to lots of incredibly successful people.
All in the one space.
One space. These people would not pick up your phone call necessarily, but they're there. You could walk up to them and chit-chat. You could walk up to them and hear their ideas and just listen and get inspired. The more people you talk to, we're in Vegas. Play the odds. The odds are if you talk to a lot of people, you're going to have connections.
100%.
It may take you lots and lots of people to talk to, but play the odds.
Yeah, I think I will say I do think this comes more naturally for me and you. Like I genuinely enjoy people, and I think you do too, and you're genuinely curious about people. So it's very easy, like we were saying before we started this podcast, like there's times we could talk for 3 hours just catching up. I think it's such an opportunity for people to meet like-minded individuals at these types of events. And it's kind of like fun to watch people's growth trajectory over time. I mean, where you were, a few years ago to where you are now, is just massively different.
Well, look at you and look at me. Nobody at this national level knew who I was 4 years ago.
Really?
Not one person.
Me neither.
And nobody knew who you were.
Nobody knew me.
4 to 5 years ago, not one person. I would have walked in here. If I'd walked in a suit, not one person would have known who I was. Now, you and I have developed a really strong connection with many, many, many people at these conferences, vendors, lawyers, paralegals, and others. And we've talked about this. Talk to the vendors.
Talk to
everybody.
A lot of our friends are what I call vendor partners, because I do feel like they are a partner in your business if you're working together. But I also, like you, am friends with a lot of people I don't even work with currently. Absolutely. You never know what could happen.
And also, Jen, the number of times I've talked to a vendor and they gave me an idea. I'm not going to buy their product necessarily, but I'm like, oh, I could do that and implement it. I mean, I could think of early on, I think in my career at coming to these large conferences, I remembered one of the vendors early on had a product that helped get Google reviews. And I had 5 Google reviews. I mean, I had nothing. I was no energy in it. I come back and I'm like, let's gather Google reviews. I didn't buy the product, but I got inspired by the idea. And again, I know you talk to enough people, you're going to get a lot of inspired ideas from those conversations. So I guess I would ask you, if you're not wired like Jenn Gore or Darren Findling, where you're very comfortable talking to people, what do you tell somebody who's shy? How do you overcome
I
that?
don't know if I can speak to that because it's not been my experience, but I will say with most things in life, it's reps. Also,
You're going to build a muscle by simply
yeah.
forcing yourself to do it.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if this is your experience. For me, in the beginning, when I didn't know a ton of people, I knew one or two key people. I think Michael Morse was one of the people that helped me break into the industry because he introduced me to a lot of people. So if you can know one person like me or Darren or Michael or these key people, they know everyone.
Right.
And so I think it's the alignment with the key people like Maria. If you know people that know people, it's a wide...
They're connectors. And it's no different than when you go out to a bar or a restaurant and you're with somebody who's, the wingman concept where they're going to help introduce you. It is very helpful when you walk through the convention floors, for example,
just talk to people.
With another person, they introduce you. And that's how I met you to begin with. So I think that is a good strategy. You also, I remembered, we talked about early on a few years ago about taking photos at conferences.
So I post in real time, and I think like that is something that does take a little bit extra effort, but it's not hard for me. But I like to post in real time because it kind of is weird when like when you post, like it's not as relevant, like you don't create as much of a following. Like people that aren't here want to know what's going on here, right? They're kind of curious. Oh, I didn't go. I want to see what's going on over there. And so you're kind of giving them a window into something. And it does create sometimes a little bit of FOMO, right?
I also think, Jenn, there's a genius here because we do know that when you say to somebody, one of the words that I think, what's her name, Mel Robbins speaks about is when you say to somebody, I was just thinking about you.
Yeah.
So the moment you post a photo of another person in your feed during a conference, it's a reflection that Jenn valued that person and posted about it. And I think there's something really powerful about doing that. I think it's really smart.
It also has to do with this concept, which I'm so glad we talked about this because we talk about this in private, but I don't think I've talked about it on the podcast. So there's something called transferred credibility.
I know where you're going with this. Absolutely.
Okay. And so it's funny because I didn't really realize this until one day I was like, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. Is that if you get posted Darren in a picture with Mark Lanier, what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
People think believe. Mark Lanier thinks this guy is cool.
No question about it.
And what does that do in our subconscious mind?
No question about it. There's no question that if you are seen with other people of stature, you are viewed as if you're
elevated.
No question. Even if you're a nobody.
Even if it's not.
That's right. Even if you hardly know them. So, for example, I remember early on, I posted once, my new friend, I don't know who the person was, lawyer X, right? And this very prominent lawyer. I just met him, my new friend. Now, granted, friend is a loose word there. But people assumed that I was literally friends with the person. And again, there is this transfer of credibility that occurs simply through that process.
You know what's funny now? Now I'm feeling it on the other end where people want to come take a picture with me. And they want to say, tag me in your story, or they ask. And I'm like, the tables have turned here. This is so actually weird.
That's amazing. I remember coming back from one of these conferences, I think it was MTMP, and I had, Paris Hilton.
Yeah, we took a picture.
Yes.
Remember?
And Mike Tyson.
Yes.
I come back home, people think I'm friends with Paris Hilton.
Well, that's the way you take the pictures.
Yes. Yeah.
You
make it look a little more natural than a staged photo.
It doesn't look staged at all. And then you always take a picture with those flamingo girls.
Yeah, the flamingo people. I always like the good visuals. But I think that there's something here around, whether it's social media or using photos There's a strategy here.
Listen, you are your own PR agency.
Why are people so afraid? People are really shy about it. I lean right into it. Here's the other thing. Years ago, when the only way you could market this way is you had to hire a marketing agency and or a television company to produce commercials, right? A production company to produce. Right now, you can produce 30-second, minute and a half free commercials, and I don't mean commercials, but content, and publish it for people to see, and it costs you nothing but the time that you're going to stick the camera in front of your face and talk about a subject of which you know a lot about.
It's literally, to me, such a golden opportunity.
Remember when we heard, who was it? Gary V, I think it was.
Yeah, at Chris.
You were at Chris. You and I heard it, and we looked at each other, and we're like, we need to be posting more.
And we did. And I'm proud of us because truly, like, I think there was a lot of people there that didn't execute on that.
And didn't recognize the true value. And I think that to the extent that we're doing, a video a day, I think you're doing a video a day and I do a video a day, we could do more.
Yeah, we could definitely do more. And I've also had to navigate like my brand transition and like, this is my art, right? Like how we do our marketing, how we create our brand. This is like an creative and artistic process. And, sometimes you make mistakes. Sometimes,
but it's
you
okay.
post something and you're like, I don't know if I love that.
Well, also, Jen, I think that when you do a television commercial, of which I've never shot, but I do know you're paying a lot of money for the time and you want creative perfection. With social media,
it's not.
You want authenticity.
Authenticity.
You don't need perfection. So many people get stuck in trying to be perfect with their posts. Volume and quality volume is much better than perfection. Get it out there. Get lots 100%. Of good content out there. And especially if you're I always would come home and I would tell stories to my family and they were always amazed at stories that were happening at the office, whether it was a case or just simply business growth. But in my mind, I'm like, this is boring. I do this all the time. This isn't interesting. But when you told other people, they were fascinated. So just take that same content and post it.
I also think we've had this conversation. You have such incredible business acumen, what you've done. I feel like at some point you're going to pass this on or mentor somebody. I feel like we've had this conversation. Yeah. So is that something you would be open to? Like, you have been the student and like putting all this into play, but like I'm so amazed. Like the way Michael became my coach was I do personal injury. I saw him and I was like, you're my coach. Yeah. I need you. I feel like it's insane to me that someone who's like wants to have a successful firm hasn't come up to you and been like, Darren, be my mentor.
Yeah, Jen, great point. First, I have had many, many people. I've been very fortunate of many people that have volunteered their time to help me.
To mentor you.
I've asked them for lunch. I've asked them for coffee. And they never ever say no. They're like, yeah, I'll do that. I'll go have a cup of coffee or I'll ask questions or they're giving of their time. I've been mentored by many, many people. We've talked about coaches, the value and the benefit of having great, brilliant people help along the way. I've been coached. I've been really fortunate by lots of great people. And if there's anybody out there that's listening to this, I'm probably not going to say no if you ask me, because I do want to give it on. I do love sharing and helping. Lots of people help me along the way. Entrepreneurs value coaches. We've been coached along the way. We've been helped, sometimes paid, sometimes not paid, but we really welcome ideas from great professionals who are in the space. Been really fortunate to be trained by and coached by many of the best. And I'm ready to coach people.
Yes. I think that I just have seen this for a while and I'm like, somebody needs to capitalize on all the knowledge that you have, learned, and you are kind of like that person. You are that coaching personality.
I'm ready to help. I love helping. I love what's the expression about rising tides lifts all boats? Yeah. I love helping other people. I don't believe that there's any true trade secrets or something so unique, because ultimately the growth of my business has been based on things I learned in kindergarten. Work hard, be respectful, treat people well, strong work ethic, say thank you, all the basics. There is no magic.
There's no magic pill.
No, and I've said to my kids a lot, I want them to know that it appears on Instagram that often people have success by a lightning bolt. They somehow, rags to riches and a lightning bolt, and it was easy because they did one viral video. Most of the people that we know that have achieved success have tremendous intention, drive, discipline,
obsession,
20-mile march, obsession for that growth. Their vision is very clear and they know how to execute on it. I want my kids to know that. And I think that's an important piece. If anybody out there is watching and wants to grow a business, it isn't easy. It hasn't been easy for you.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Blood, sweat, and tears.
And I think sometimes we make it look a little easy.
Yeah.
But,
because you're gifted. You're talented.
But I do think it does take away from what you're saying is you and I have been to the, to the hilt and back. I mean, there's been times, I'm sure, in your business where you're like, this is really grueling.
It's grueling. Yeah. Sleepless nights. Many sleepless nights.
There's been business challenges that you didn't know how to navigate.
Absolutely.
There's been people you had to fire that you didn't want to fire, right? We've had those conversations.
Absolutely.
People that leave.
And things that I didn't even know how to address. But we do know, got to surround yourself with a lot of really impressive, good people. We've talked a lot about the people around. I know my strengths. I know my weakness. I knew how to build my leadership team, working on the areas that would amplify my strength and also provide support and strength in the areas that I'm not good at.
What is your strengths and weaknesses?
Well, the strength professionally is I know I have a strong vision. I'm a visionary. I have a strong vision. I know how to develop relationships. I know how to nurture those relationships and generate money and business into the business. All the little details I can do for a moment, but I can't do long term. And I did them. At one point, I was the biller. I was the receptionist.
You hated it.
Yeah, but I could do it. I was okay at it. But ultimately, delegating those out to others that do it much better. The people that do the other areas in my management team are 100x better than I ever was at those roles when I was in it. I have a non-lawyer management team for the most part, and they're brilliant. And they're doing areas that I'm completely deficient in, or I could do a little bit, but I couldn't do it for a long period of time. And I don't know.
Great self-awareness.
Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of people who are entrepreneurs don't want to delegate. They're control freaks. And ultimately, they suffer the consequence of being unwilling to give up and cede some control because they think in their mind that they're the only ones that can do this.
And that's a very limiting way of thinking. And I would always think to myself, is this scalable? And if you're the number one person, even if we could say you're the best at selling or closing deals, if that remains the case and you have nobody to do that in your organization, you're chained to the desk and you can't go on vacation with your family. You can't do high-level strategic things because you haven't relinquished any of your control and elevated other people. And so
no question.
It's the hard thing of going from being an A player, which is somebody who, I think a lot of us were very early on really good at things. And then you have to make the transition to becoming the leader of people who are very good at things.
Right. It's quite different, right? There's a lot of people that are very successful and who have no interest in scaling and growing or delegating. God bless you. Great. But those who truly want to scale a business and grow, you can't do everything. I mean, I think I heard Jeff Bezos recently talk about his role. He's making just a few decisions a day. That's all his role is now. And I think that this idea that I should be spending the vast majority, 90+% of my day is in my genius.
Yes.
The rest, no. And the moment I dip out of that 90%, I'm injuring the company. I'm not doing anything to help advance and grow the business.
I love that.
So I really have to stay in that space. And I would suggest that when you wake up in the morning and you jump out of bed or roll out of bed or however you get out of bed and you go, what are you thinking about? Are you thinking about writing a brief? Are you thinking about growing the business? Are you thinking about making a sales call? Are you thinking about managing? Like, what do you really?
What
Everybody,
jazzes you up?
what jazzes you? What are you great at, and what do you have the capacity to do? And where are you best? For me, I get up in the morning. I want to be creative. I want to build and scale and grow a business. That is where my mind is. If I spent most of my morning hours and I knew that I had just paperwork after paperwork, day after day, that would be a bad fit.
Darren, thank you so much for coming on here today. We could talk for hours. You have so much to share. I'm so grateful to have you as a friend in the industry.
And thanks, Jen. I appreciate the opportunity to do this with you.
If you found this episode interesting, like and subscribe, and we will see you on the next one.